I'm Mike.
I'm Jason.
This is Snake Envy. Big news this week.
Yeah.
What's going on?
We're warming up, ready to get the breeding season kicked off and go out another year.
Brumation is over. So, in the spirit of our channel, you being the breeder, me being the hobbyist, the question hobbyists always ask, do I need to brumate my snakes? Now, my answer is always, you don't need to brumate your snakes unless you're going to breed them. However, it can be convenient to brumate. What's some of the advantages of brumating beyond breeding?
Well, one thing I think brumation can definitely, it can stress an animal out, but I also think that it can maybe lengthen the lifespan because, especially when you're dealing with North American clubrids, they hibernate in the wild.
Right.
And so I always want to try to mimic Mother Nature as best as I can.
Yeah.
I just think, the grind of life, and if you're brumation is a time of, you're dormant and you're not.
It's a time of rest.
You're not gaining more cholesterol, or you're not eating. You're like, I think it's a healthy thing, really, and they're made to do it.
Well, we've talked about on here before that I think one of the topics that maybe should be talked about a little more in the hobby that isn't is that with cold-blooded animals, energy conservation is a very big deal for them. And one of the reasons I feed a varied diet, just beyond enrichment and stimulation, and I'm certain there's probably some nutritional benefit, but I actually view it in terms of energy conservation. If a bull snake, for example, has to digest a smaller medium rat week after week after week after week, that's actually pretty energy intensive. And they're not covering the kind of ground that they are in the wild where they would be burning calories. So if I vary a rat one week and a couple of chicks the next week, the calorie load is actually significantly different. And so by varying diets, well, you help in terms of that energy conservation. Brumation is similar. They're going to go a few months with no digestion, very little movement. Other than drinking water, they're not really taking anything in, and we don't even really know for sure how often they drink. So very low in terms of energy. So yeah, I could see that where you might be extending life just because you're not burning energy continually around the clock. The other thing I would mention for people out there is if you have a life change coming up, maybe you're in the middle of a job change and you're commuting back and forth now and you're getting ready to move. And if it happens to coincide with winter, brumate your snakes and you're not going to have to worry about them during that time period. Not going to have to worry about feeding them. You just have to make sure they've got water. If you're in the middle of a move at all. Also, if you've been thinking about redoing your snake room or maybe upgrading your enclosure, save that for fall and do that over the winter while your snakes brumate. And you've got free range of your room while the snakes are elsewhere. And you can, do everything you need to do and not worry about feeding, cleaning. Sometimes it's just a nice break. I've never personally done it, but I've talked to hobbyists who brumate and they say, hey, I get a break for 2 or 3 months. Now, a lot of hobbyists don't brumate for as long as breeders do. When did you put them down? How long has this been?
It's 4 months.
4 months.
Yeah, and I've been doing that for, 12 years or so.
Yeah.
3 months is plenty, but...
Yeah. But even as a hobbyist, you say, hey, I'm going to take a couple month break, or we want to go travel, or I'm in the middle of a job, or I want to redo the snake room. Even if you just took 2-3 months off and brumated your snakes elsewhere in the house, in a basement or in a garage or wherever you can maintain those temperatures, it's a great way just to get a break and kind of relax for a little bit.
Yeah.
All right. So the other question that we hear a lot this time of year on social media, we always get the same stuff going on in the fall and then again in the spring, is what's going on with my snakes? So kind of lay out for everybody what's some of the behavioral changes you might see in snakes this time of year, whether they brumated or not.
Yeah, this time of year you might have a bunch of males not eat. They will go off feed.
Yes.
They have a one-track mind, and breeding is on their mind, and
They're looking for the ladies.
food isn't important right now. So,
and the other part of that behavior is they will be cruising. They will be very, very active.
Super active.
Super active, and they probably don't want to eat. Now, my two biggest males, my Northern Mexican Pine and my Kankakee Bull, they're in the middle of that right now. The Bull a little more so than the Pine, but neither of them have eaten now for about 3 weeks. We're coming up on the end of February. And it's been about 3 weeks since they have eaten. And the Bull in particular, back and forth, around and back and forth.
Around in circles. There you go.
So in the wild, they would be covering a lot of ground in the search for females. Now, here in Utah, not quite warm enough for that yet. But in some parts of the country, snakes are already waking up and they're out there getting ready to breed. But in captivity, where they're in a warmer environment than outside, that male behavior is already starting to kick in. Some of it's driven by hormones, but some of it is driven by just kind of the fact that winter, nighttime temperatures are warming up a little bit. They're aware of all that stuff.
Yeah, they're aware. I think they're aware of what's going on outside. I think that they can tell when a high pressure or a low pressure's outside. Like they're indoors, but I feel like they can sense that. They have the instincts for that.
I think they're a little more sensitive to subtle changes that maybe we eventually clue into, but in fall and in spring, you start noticing the sun coming through the windows a different way. You start noticing maybe cooler or warmer nights and mornings as you're getting out of bed. And by the time we start to notice and figure that out, snakes have already been well aware of it. And yeah, a lot of people think maybe barometric pressure, maybe they're sensitive to that. But if you think about it in the wild, if snakes waited to go underground and seek refuge for winter until the snow fell, it's too late.
Yeah.
And that could be harmful or fatal. Mm-hmm. So they start cluing in to a lot of changes that are going on in the weather well before the snow flies.
Yeah.
And they're well underground prior to all that happening. So they have to be a little more sensitive.
I think that they even know if you have a prolonged fall, even though your temperatures might be 80, they know that cold can be the next week, and they're already hanging out at den sites or wherever they're hibernating, and they're not eating a lot, and that's a lot of instinctual stuff going on, I believe.
What do you have for us, Jason?
This is a Metallica Great Basin gopher snake. This is this guy's first year to breed. I got a little group of these going this year, but really excited because it's been a few years, and this one right here is exceptional. The colors on it, so it's doing some funny stuff with his tongue.
Now, are these a result of some wild-caught collection? Are these locality animals, or how does this Metallica color? Where does that originate? Where does that come from?
So this orange coloration and these black blotching, this black and this orange is from central Utah locality. I was originally going to make orange albinos. Something in the breeding the animals back together after I raised them up. Something happened that was very unexpected in an anery or a form of anery or something like that. popped out, and that's what gives this metallic look. That's why it gives them, and that's what gives them the name Metallica, because it has this orange metallic look, and it's hard to capture on cameras and stuff. But compared to a normal, the het, this is really kind of orange and peach color, orange and pink a little bit, where the other ones are more straight up orange. So
very cool. So for this guy, in this video, we're talking about males and their desire to breed, even, and, you know, we should mention, even before kind of what you would think is breeding age, it's not uncommon even for like 1 and 2 year old males to get a little frantic in the spring. But once they hit 3 and older, the hormones really start to kick in. But this guy, he actually gets to live out his instincts and his desires this year for the first time. So exciting for him. Thanks. So if you're a little newer to the hobby, males in particular, probably you're going to notice some of your males going in and out of feed right now, and it's perfectly normal for them to take a few weeks off if you notice that frantic behavior. In fact, I was filming the video last week while you weren't filming well about snakes escaping, and I said, hey, I'll open the Kankakee's enclosure and take a little picture of him peeking out of it. And as part of that frenzied, you know, male spring, where's the ladies behavior, he did not want to go back in. So it was a struggle. He's a big 6.5 footer. And it was actually a struggle to get him. Normally when you're handling him, doing something with him, you know, you just aim them in and they usually are happy to go right back in their enclosure. This time he did everything he could to reverse course, and he fought me every step of the way in terms of going back in. So that's part of that kind of, you know, he's driven right now to go explore. Yeah, he doesn't want to be confined. So it was interesting. I got a laugh out of it. I was like, wow, you know, that's just true to form in terms of, you know, that pacing behavior and that cruising behavior. But he gets out. He does not want to go back in. So he wanted to go out and find the ladies. What else? What's going on this time of year? So what about females? Are the females this time of year typically eating really well because now they're gearing up for breeding? And how long do you wait to feed your snakes, including females, after they come out of brumation?
I usually wait about 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
I've done the 1 week thing. I'm going to do a 5-day thing today. I'm feeding today. I'm going to feed a few little fuzzies to some small milk snakes and see. They might not be ready. Yeah. I find waiting 2 weeks. Well, I find like I've tried to go 1 week, and yeah, a lot of them do eat. A lot of them don't, and so you're like,
you're just wasting.
I've got a ton of uneaten rodents here, so you probably don't want to waste money. So you know, 1 week. 1 week in time is not a big deal.
No.
I don't see. I just started going 2 weeks because I don't want to waste money on uneaten rodents.
There's also some species-specific things that would probably be a good idea for some of you to know. If you're keeping milk snakes, for example. So the only snake in my collection out of 21 snakes I've got at home right now, I only brumated one. He's here. I'm going to take him home tonight. And that's a mountain king snake. You and I talked when fall came around, and I said, hey, he's already starting to fast. He's already taken 2-3 weeks off. And you pointed out, hey, for that particular species, he probably won't go back on food over the winter, particularly because he is a snake that had brumated in the past. So we just went ahead and brumated him, and that's perfectly fine. There are some species that even as a hobbyist, it's just not worth stressing yourself all winter long about why won't this guy eat. Now, what's interesting is I legally collected, we were in southern Arizona last year in the spring, and a western green rat snake. And these are snakes that in terms of their behavior and in terms of the way they live, they're actually very similar to these kings and milks. And I wondered, how was he going to react to winter? Because again, my preference is to go ahead and feed them throughout the winter. But I do have several snakes in my collection that I'll back off to every other week feedings. I'm not worried when a snake doesn't eat in the winter. It's perfectly normal. And what's interesting about that green rat, he ate sporadically, but he did eat. So he would go 3 weeks and not eat, then he would eat 2, then he would go, then he would go another couple weeks without eating, then he would eat 1. And I think a couple times over the winter, he ate 2 weeks in a row. So he got a lot of meals in, and he's growing, shedding, and that's all good. But I've accustomed him now to the idea that he doesn't have to brumate. And so I feel like it was a success. But what are some other examples of maybe species you've kept where maybe even as a hobbyist it'd be a good idea to think about brumating them because it's just going to be stressful all winter long?
Yeah. The first snake that comes to my mind is Arizona Mountain Kings, Pyros.
Yeah.
They will go off feed every time. And they, well before, like August, you'll start seeing them. It's still 100 degrees outside. They're not going to eat. They're done for the year. A lot of the times. A lot of the mountain kings, like California mountain kings, Arizona mountain kings, Mexicana stuff, the Greer-eye, that high elevation stuff, that almost always goes off feed in the winter.
And what Jason's saying is that it won't be a 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there. Like sometimes when they shut down, they're done.
Yeah, like for sure, Pyros, they'll shut. I think they only eat 5 months out of the year, really.
Right, yeah. So where my green rat ate sporadically, chances are, had I kept this mountain king at home, very good chance he just wouldn't have eaten
just
at
would have
all.
wasted energy.
And then that would have actually caused him to decline over the winter. That's a long time to not eat.
For sure.
When you put them in brumation, you're slowing down that metabolism. So typically they're not losing weight. Typically they're not affected by not eating. Had I kept him at home where it's warm, very good chance he would have seen a decline in weight, decline in health. So it was smart to come and brumate him. So keep that in mind if you're a hobbyist with certain species. It still might be a good idea to think about brumating. Otherwise, you're just going to be stressed half the year as to why they're not eating and potential health problems for your snake. What else in the spring? Anything that people should be keeping an eye out? Maybe assure people that, hey, some of the things going on with your snakes this time of year are perfectly normal. Don't stress.
Yeah. I mean, if you're not a breeder either, too, they still will want to instinctually breed. And so, and if you have a snake and you hibernated it or, brumated it and then 8 weeks after, the thing doesn't want to eat, and it's probably developing eggs, even if they're not fertile, they still, if they're really healthy and fed well, they still might lay infertile eggs for you.
Exactly.
And so that could be there's a few weeks where probably 2 to 3 weeks prior to laying, they might not eat at all. So.
Yeah. So females, it'll come a little later, but they'll want to decrease their food as well. Whereas the males, it's kind of right now.
Yeah.
They're shutting down food production, but for the females, it's going to wait a little bit. It's going to be
not all of them do that either.
Yeah, exactly.
And some will some will eat right a week before they lay, but but a lot of them won't.
But generally
they
speaking,
slow down a little bit right before.
So hopefully this was helpful. Please like, subscribe, comment. Feel free to ask some questions. You got an expert here on kind of the breeding cycles of these animals. The other thing I'd point out that just came to my mind, it's pretty rare these days, but if you cohabitate any snakes, like if you have males together, they'll actually try to breed with one another.
Or fight, combat.
Yeah, or depending on the species, they'll be battling for territory. So that's one of the reasons cohabitation is not as popular as it used to be, and partly why females are kind of the way to go if you do cohabitate. Males, you can run into some additional issues. But this time of year, if this is your first year having snakes, you're absolutely gonna have some questions. What is going on? Particularly, what is going on with my males when you can hear them in their enclosure around and around and around.
And yeah, and when you if you have two males together, you'll hear a lot of racket in there.
Oh, yeah.
You'll be hearing
Yeah.
smacking
Yeah.
tails against cages and all kinds. Like they'll go into a combat phase.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot going on this time of year, but it's an exciting time of year because breeding season is right around the corner. So end of February right now, when do you start pairing your first species?
I will start pairing stuff up at the end of March.
End of March.
My earliest breeders, I might there's some stuff I might wait 3 weeks, but generally about 4 to 5. And then depending on the species, it'll stagger out months. Like some stuff goes a month later. So
right now it's getting everybody fed. It's getting everybody ready and getting the females to healthy weights and getting the males energized to breed. But yes, ask questions and comment. Please tell us about some of your experiences in the spring and some of your experiences with those crazy males this time of year. Thank you.
thanks.